Hello?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi,
Hi, Mike. You can hear me? Okay, thanks. That's all I needed to know.
It was
we
like,
can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yes, when I go from like the university to my house to the university to my house, like I don't know what happens, but I think it just adjusts the settings or something. So just making sure.
Great. Good morning, Ashley. Are we good to go?
Ready when you are.
All right. Let me do a head count just to know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Looks like we do have a quorum. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the Public Works Committee to order. And Ashley, if we can do a quick roll call for attendance, please.
Anderson, Becerra,
Present.
Carlino,
Present.
Contos, Hess,
present.
Jones,
Present.
Jordan,
Present.
Nugent,
Present.
Savage,
Present.
Cheryl,
Present.
Vasika, West. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. And I think I'm out of order again. I think it's my wish to be in person. Keeps me keep skipping the first part of sharing how to join. If we could quickly share that slide so that anyone wanting to participate virtually knows how to do it. Great. You can find all information about how to participate on the city's website under the meetings tab. And you can always contact City Council by calling 406-552-6012 or emailing council@ci.missoula.mt.us. And with that, we have minutes to approve from, let's see, May 18th. Are there any changes to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will be approved and will be on the consent agenda. Do a quick look for any public comment. And we don't have any public in the waiting room or in attendance. So with that, we will move to the first item on the agenda, and that is appointments to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board. And I will read the motion. This is allowing the mayor to confirm appointments of Kate Withel and Brandon Vassar. Hope I didn't butcher your name too bad. To the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board. Kate Withel's term will begin immediately, and she'll be filling a vacated term that expires on September 30th of 2023. and Brandon Vassar will begin immediately and fill a vacated term that expires on September 30th, 2024. I just want to mention that both these members bring a lot of experience and expertise to the board. Kate is with Adventure Cycling, and Brandon is an active community volunteer. Both their expertise will be of great service on this board. So are there any questions from council members about these two appointments? Amber?
I don't have any questions, but I would be happy to make the recommended motion, and I think you spoke to it succinctly, so I won't add much more, but I'm happy to make it, and I'm thankful that they're willing to serve.
Great. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. We'll take public comment if there's any, but we don't have any. So with that, if we could take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess, Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you get me? I'd like to say yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. I didn't get you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So this item passes, and I will be on our consent agenda. My gratitude again to both Kate and Brandon for serving on this board. Our next item on the agenda is a access agreement and encroachment easement for Northwestern Energy Substation at Patty Street, and Troy Monroe is here to present.
Good morning, Troy Monroe, City Engineer for Development and Review. I'm sharing a screen of a Google map. Do you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. So what this is what you see on the screen is Northwestern Energy's existing Patty Street substation. And if you guys went down there now, they would have this fence line that's been established, has been in there since I think all of our lifetimes. They are redoing the substation, but they're keeping the existing footprint. Now, you guys have already seen this on May 8th, the art wall agreement was passed by council on May 16th. Easements through Caris Park and this parking lot was approved by council. But in addition to all those, what we are having to do is establish an easement for part of Patty Street right of way and part of Kiwanis Street right of way that has historically been used. And we're just talking about a couple of feet, both sides are within the larger right of way. So that's all we're doing. They're not expanding, they're just keeping their existing footprint. But this has been, it hasn't been officially approved with an easement in the past. And that's all we're doing is clarifying that, yes, they do have permission to continue using their existing footprint. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Troy. Any questions from council members? Amber?
I don't have any questions. I'm just happy to make the recommended motion. I think it's good to clean these things up. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Quick check on our public for any public comment on this item. I see Jeremy Keene is on the attendee. Maybe we can promote him. Okay, we don't have any comments. I will just add that I think it's good housekeeping in a way to make sure that we know what our right-of-ways are being used for and easements that are attached to a specific project. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, Troy. And with that, if we can take a roll call vote, please.
Sarah,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
yes,
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
That is 10 yeses and 0 nos.
Thank you, Ashley. So that too passes and it'll be on our consent agenda. Our next item is a resolution declaring VHF radios as surplus and authorizing its disposal. I'm not sure I'm seeing Rick on the attendance list.
Hey, Merta, he was just trying to call me on my cell phone. Can you give me a second? Let me see if I can catch him and see what's going on.
Sure.
Bye. All right, I apologize, but Rick did not get the invite. However, he just explained to me what's going on here. So these are surplus radios, the older ones that were left over from the recent upgrade for the radios that were the handheld ones. And this is a resolution to donate these to the county.
Okay. Thank you, Brian, for the impromptu presentation. I appreciate it. Are there any questions from council members? Okay, anyone who wants to make the motion? Amber.
I'm happy to make the recommended motion. I'm glad we are donating them and I'm glad that they're still going to be used. So they're not going in the landfill. Yeah, thanks for bringing it and thanks for finding a home for them.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Amber.
I agree. Okay, we have no public in the attendance to provide public comment on this item. So with that, we will take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Sarah,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
yes,
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl, West.
Yes.
Okay, that's 10 yeses and 0 nos.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. That too passes and it'll be on our consent agenda. And our last item on the agenda is a presentation by Brian Hansel on street operations and maintenance. Go ahead and take it away, Brian.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Hensel, Deputy Public Works Director for City of Missoula Streets. And I will attempt to share my screen here. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Okay. So Jeremy requested that I do an overview of all of streets operations and mobility, and particularly for some of our newer council members, and just try to give a little bit more of an overview on what actually goes on down here. So I have a presentation that Lori Hart helped me put together. And if some of you have ever attended Citizens Academy, some of these slides may look familiar. I apologize for that, but hopefully you'll still get some good information. All right, so. All right, so as you can see here, here's our org chart. We have, well, when we did the reorg, we had street maintenance, which I was a former superintendent, and we had traffic services and the sign shop and striping, or excuse me, sign shop and striping, and Chad Pancake superintendent now. And then Rick Larson was under traffic signals and communications. And what isn't on here also is later on, we decided to put city cemetery under public works and streets. But we wanted to focus on giving the overview for just streets, so we can follow up with a cemetery one, probably at budget at a later time. All right, so our duties. We have responsibility for maintaining all city public street right of way. And we also have a maintenance agreement with Montana Department of Transportation, where we maintain the state highways, well, most of the state highways that run through city limits. There are a few now with the annexation a few years ago that we do not maintain. So here's just a brief overview of where we are. Currently city streets, 311 centerline miles, 30.2 centerline miles of MDT right away. These are some Google numbers that Lori put together for us. Missoula population, 73,000. It's probably substantially higher than that. As you can see, that's from 2020. We're probably 120 now based on all the subdivisions I see going on. All right, so here's a map. I apologize if it's hard to see, but the streets in red are the MDT routes that are allocated under that maintenance agreement. And it's also on our website if you want to go into it a little bit more detail. But if you notice there, Broadway, there's a gap between that and Reserve Street. We do not maintain that portion except for we do sweep it, but no asphalt maintenance. And then Broadway extends into the newly annexed area. We did not take that in under the maintenance agreement. So let me focus on the maintenance agreement first. It's an agreement that takes up quite a bit of our time and resources, not just with maintenance, but also with signing, striping, and then comm shop signals. And then Parks also plays a role in this with some of the adjacent greenways and landscaping. So as I mentioned, it's state roadway within city limits. The bridges, we do some of the maintenance on the bridges, but a lot of the main structural inspections and repair of that MDT takes on, but the approach maintenance, those are covered under the agreement. So as part of that agreement, MDT will reimburse us for parts and materials and electric costs, like for example, any of the lighting. They pay for those power bills on those MDT routes. The city contributes labor and equipment towards administering this contract. And we perform snow removal, street cleaning. We also do storm sewer maintenance, but recently we made a change to that program in that now the storm sewer maintenance is done more of a special project. We don't just do the routine maintenance. And that was in part due to a change when we created the stormwater district, where we were assessing all the properties a certain amount of money to maintain storm. And so we had to do the same thing for the storm or the MDT storm infrastructure. So we don't do routine maintenance. However, if MDT sees a stormwater problem, then they can elect to pay the city reimburses for labor, equipment, and materials. Other than we will respond to pooling. So say we get a rain event and we got pools all over the city, we will activate our sweepers and backers just to go do a quick ponding removal as a public safety effort. But any of the actual infrastructure repair, MDT would have to reimburse us beyond our normal maintenance activities. And we also do street surface, pothole patching, crack sealing, mastic application. And again, they do reimburse us for those materials. Signals, Rick's crew and signals and comm shop. they maintain and repair all the MDT owned traffic signals, which are the majority of the ones in the city. They also take care of the MDT owned streetlights, with the exception of some of the newer ones that were affiliated with big projects like the Van Buren roundabouts, the Orange Street roundabouts, some of the new ones on the Hagen Bridge. Those are covered under separate maintenance agreements. And even though they overlap with our previous maintenance agreement, those are now being maintained by the city at the city's expense. So as you can see, as some of the other pedestrian crossing infrastructure improvements we made are also done by Rick's crews. Traffic services, so that's signing and striping. Chad's group, Chad Pancakes, the superintendent. He takes care of all the sign and striping maintenance, pavement striping, curb painting, in addition to the agreement, but also over the city. So what this maintenance agreement does, and it's kind of hard to put a performance measure on this, but it benefits the city, the MDT, and then also the citizens, is that it gives us a really good cooperative agreement with MDT, in that we have this agreement and enables us to do special projects. And it also helps improve the quality of these city routes that are MDT, or these MDT routes within the city. And with this agreement, and I know I've mentioned the special projects, and what those mean is, like, for example, we can do a special project on a state route that would go above and beyond what you would consider normal maintenance. Like, for example, we're doing one this summer for MDT on Higgins between Brooks and the university in front of Hellgate High School. And I started on it last summer. We did some ADA ramp upgrades. And then when school's out, streets operations and maintenance will come in. We're going to mill and pave out those 4 blocks and repave the whole thing. And this is a win-win, because we're fixing a bad section of Higgins. Anybody that rides bike probably knows about this spot. And hopefully we can fix some of the draining and some of the perpetual potholes. And not only does this special project improve the street condition, but it also is a way for the city to generate revenue. So when I bill MDT at the conclusion of the project, they will reimburse us for all of our labor and our equipment costs plus materials. Well, that amount for labor and equipment is considered revenue, because the city has already budgeted the salary for those employees. We purchased the equipment. So it is a way for us to generate revenue, and on certain budget and fiscal years, that can be an excellent benefit for it to help balance the bottom line come June 30. Next one. All right, so let's go into some of the individual activities for each of the departments. So first, signals, lighting, and communications shop. I mentioned Rick Larson. He's the one in charge of that. Here's a nice picture. I think this is on South Ave at Sentinel, I believe. So Rick has himself and 4 technicians, and they maintain and repair the city traffic signals. So we have 11 city, but look at MDT, 58 of them. So the majority of Rick's workload of signals are on the MDT ones. We have 85 city-owned streetlights and poles, and not only with repairing, but Rick is also, through the last several years, when he had a little budget surplus, he's been changing the old, Rick always tells me what these are, but I think they're the old phosphorus lights to now LEDs. So we've also seen a reduction in our power bills. Here's some of our pedestrian infrastructure. Here's an RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Rick's group maintains these and repairs them. And see the solar panel on top, so they do not require an actual power conduit. Although unfortunately, these solar panels, people like to steal these. And we're always looking at adding these. All right, next one. And also, you guys probably have heard some of the information coming in about the city's big CIP to upgrade our radio communications. The city maintains and owns 2 remote tower sites on top of mountains. And even though I'm the deputy director, I have not had an opportunity to go up with Rick. I want to see these. I bet the view is incredible from some of these places. So if I ever get to go, I'll invite any of the council if anyone wants to ride along. All right, another part of our comm shop's responsibility is they install all the electronics, the computers, video cameras, all the radios on the police department patrol vehicles. And this is no small task. And this from 2021, they did 16 installations, over 700 hours on doing these. And my hat's off to these guys, because every time that PD gets a batch of new vehicles and then they may change manufacturers, like for example, now they're doing some hybrids, they basically have to relearn everything because the different manufacturers have different computer systems. So this takes a high level of expertise and it's hard work. So these guys do a great job on keeping these first response vehicles in operation. Plus, if there's a problem, they also fix them. And another thing that takes quite a bit of Rick's time and has increasing here with all the new development is Rick will also review any private development plans for new street lighting to make sure that they meet city standards. And the reason we do that, and it takes a lot of Rick's time, is that we want to make sure that we can maintain these after they're built. And so Rick, oh, sorry, there was my phone. I apologize for that. Anyway, so there's a lot of incentive for Rick to do this, and he does a great job with it. He's been at the city for 100 years, plus or minus. So we really appreciate his efforts with that. All right, traffic services. And I mentioned Chad Pancake. He's the superintendent. So they're the ones that do signing, striping, bike lanes, long lanes, curb paint, and then take care of our signs. In 2021, they did over 94 miles of long line striping. As you can see, this is a newer striping truck that we purchased a few years ago. Before that, they had a tractor, believe it or not. That was their long line. Chad's group also, they go out and refresh all the pedestrian, well, not all of them, but as many crosswalks for schools and all over town. They do the bicycle arrows, turn lane arrows, curb painting. And a couple of years ago, I have to commend Chad. We were struggling with a brand of water-based paint that we were using for all of these activities. It was only buying us maybe 1 or 2 years at the most. So Chad reached out, did some research, some of the manufacturers, and he found this product for symbols that's a heated polymer type of symbol that they can lay it down on the asphalt, and they have these long, it looks like a big hair dryer with a flamethrower inside, that they can lay these out and heat them. And we're expecting to see 5 to 7 years, which will increase the life and hopefully reduce our maintenance requirements and also give us a longer, better service life. And then also Chad switched to a different type of long line paint. It is still water-based. And for only an extra $1 a gallon, it's called high build, we should start seeing a 3 to 5 year life. And Chad has appreciated some of this benefit already, in that hopefully he can start getting caught up with some of his maintenance activities due to this improved paint. Chad's group also, they'll go out and replace street signs, traffic control signs. And every time there's a windstorm, Chad will call me up and say, yeah, I lost 15 signs this weekend because of wind. Or if there's some sort of an event over the weekend, like St. Patty's Day, we seem to lose a lot of signs on Monday with those types of events. So every time a sign gets hit or run over, Chad's guys are very prompt to go out and get these fixed. And the green street signs, some of these have a way of disappearing too, particularly the ones like Mary Jane. That one never lasts. I don't know why. So hats off to these guys. They do a great job. There's probably upwards of 100,000 signs in the city. So as you can see, next slide, we have not actually gone through and done a individual count of 100,000 signs. So it's an estimate, but there's a lot of them. Also, Chad does Mountain Line bus stop maintenance and takes care of their signs. And I think they're paying us around $5,000 a year for that. Street name signs, as you can see. And another thing too, is we've also been enacting this new program with our quick build traffic circles, whereas we're responding to complaints from citizens about speeding in those local neighborhoods. And then we've been using delineators in lieu of that large permanent and capital improvement for concrete and curb and all that goes into those actual traffic circles that hopefully one day we can do. But Chad's guys are also installing those delineators on those quick build circles, and then he'll also have to replace them as the street plows come by and wipe half of them out with snow berms. Although we didn't do too bad last winter. Currently, Chad's guys also assist with maintaining the sidewalk snow removal on MDT routes and the bridge that we talked about previously. And then also they'll do snow removal on city-owned sidewalks, whereas that would be a sidewalk adjacent to, say, city property or on right-of-way where there's really no apparent adjacent landowner. And as I talked about some of the traffic circles, this was kind of a cool one we did down at 3rd and Myrtle. You can see the delineators and the paint. This was also with those poly type of thermal symbols that we special order. And this one was done with a grant through Ben Weiss's group. So this one we didn't have to pay for materials, but Chad's guys were the ones who went out and installed all this. If you have not seen this, I would encourage, go take a walk down there. You can see it. Additional duties, we also do over 100 traffic and speed counts, and those are done at request of our mobility group. Citizens call in it. Council, I'm sure you get complaints from constituents regarding speeding in their neighborhoods. And one of the tools that we use to evaluate the severity of it and the amount of speeding is, you guys have probably all seen the tubes that get laid out in the streets. And then also we'll deploy these speed trailers. And Chad's group, they're the ones that do all this work, which there's a lot of them. We get just a boatload of traffic count requests throughout any given season. Chad also gets involved with reviewing signing and striping plans for private development. Once again, that's an effort by the city, is that we want to make sure that developers are building them to our standards, because when they walk away, then they become a maintenance issue for signing and striping. So Chad does a great job, takes a lot of time. He's gotten really good at it, knows what he's doing. And it also benefits the developers. They'll often call and ask Chad for troubleshooting options or what they even need to do. And so he's really good at providing assistance even to the developers and the public. Another one of our programs, this is a concrete grinder. And if we identify a trip hazard, we focus primarily in the downtown area, is that this machine can be used to grind down trip hazards where sidewalks are heaving. And Chad's been doing this, boy, forgive me for not knowing the exact year, but I'm going to guess 5 to 7 years. But because of this program, we've actually been able to reduce our MMI insurance, not only the number of claims, but also the amount that we're paying for these types of accidents on our insurance premium. So this has benefited in lower costs for our insurance. Chad also gets involved with assisting police department with locks on abandoned bikes. It's always shocking to me how many times he has to go do that. All right, street maintenance. So the other department is the guys you see out patching potholes and sweeping and crack sealing. This picture actually was taken from a big project 2 years ago on 3rd Street. Some of you may remember, I think it was even in the paper, this was just supposed to be a simple mill and pave. But then we found out that there was an old trolley car track under there where all the wood rails were set in concrete. And the wood ties. So it turned into a whole bunch of work, and we were able to get it done, removed all the ties, and pretty much had to rebuild the street. Street maintenance, we are responsible for sweeping the city. We do it 4 times a year. We do spring cleanup. We do 2 regular sweepings during the summer. And then we also will do it during our normal leaf collection. And sweeping is one of our major operations in town. It helps obviously with air quality, but it also helps improve and maintain our water quality. Everything that we get off the street does not flow into our storm drain infrastructure. Leaf collection, in 2021, over 1,000 loads, and we take all those to Garden City Compost. Obviously keeps the streets clean, and then keeps the leaves not only from entering the stormwater infrastructure, but even plugging the storm drain grates. And the leaf collection program takes us usually about 6 weeks, but we often will end up going back and picking up piles throughout the winter. Oftentimes people don't get them out in time, or not all the leaves have fallen by the time we have to go out and start leaf collection. So by default, we often have to come back. This is kind of a cool picture. Several years ago, I was fortunate to be able to purchase a surplus garbage truck. And we had our welder, who is extremely talented, modify the back end of it so that it would accommodate the loaders dumping into the back of it. And then that garbage truck can compact the leaves and put them into a much tighter bundle. And this one truck probably takes the place of 3 conventional tandem axle dump trucks, saving us time. And then we deliver a big compact ball of leaves over to compost. One of our other main functions, obviously, is we need to take care of streets. Excuse me, we are fortunate that we have equipment to go out and mill and pave streets all over town. Boy, pardon me, my throat is really dry today. Last year, we were able to get 3.8 centerline miles of streets, mill and paved. We also had the ability to do chip sealing. Last 2021, 14.4 miles of streets. And in the chip sealing program, this is probably the best maintenance application that you can do for asphalt. We spend a fair amount of resources and time prepping some streets before you can chip seal. They need to be crack sealed. They need to have mastic put on them. Oftentimes they need to have some paving done. So streets will spend the large part of the first few months of summer going out and doing prep and getting these streets ready for our program. FY21, we patched over 7,000 potholes, and that is ongoing. My goal one day before I retire is I would like to report we patched 0 potholes. Not because we were not doing it, but because there weren't any. I don't know if I'm going to make that or not, but we always strive for that. All right, snow operations. So this is a large, major part of our program during the winter. We will activate our snow plows when we get 2 inches of snow accumulation. Although even when we just get those freeze thaws, obviously when the streets get icy and slick, we'll send out our crews. The city is plowed on a priority basis where we focus on our main routes, the ones having the most traffic, for example, Reserve, Higgins, Brooks. Those are all done first. Then as those become safe and snow's been de-iced and plowed, then we'll move into 2s and 3s, which are bus routes, streets with radiuses or slopes. And we'll keep working on those until we get those done or until it quits snowing. About 3 years ago, council was kind enough to award some additional FTEs. We got 4 additional employees, and then we were able to mobilize 5 pickup plows. And this was a tremendous benefit. Whereas these plows and crew, all they have to focus on is going into the neighborhoods and doing local streets. And the reason for that was with our priority plow system is we were not able to get into the local streets often until it quit snowing. So let's say a snow event lasts for 24 hours, takes us 3 or 4 days to get the priorities done. Then we go into the local streets. Well, by that time, all that snow has been snowpacked. It can be icy, it can be slick. And then the truck plows really can't remove that hard packed snow. So with these 5 pickup plows, they can go in there and get a first shot at getting as much of that snow moved out of the way as possible. These new plows and program have been very well received by the public. Last winter, I would say, was probably the least amount of complaints that I've ever had in 22 years. And it was amazing how people focused on their own streets getting plowed. We didn't really reduce our level of service on the priorities, but if you could plow a local street and get it done quick, you'd be amazing how positive the response is. Another thing that street maintenance is, we assist the stormwater utility. Prior to the creation of the district, stormwater maintenance was the full responsibility of the street maintenance crew. So the same guys that were snow plowing and paving and patching potholes were the same ones cleaning the sumps, redigging sumps, and maintaining our stormwater infrastructure. Now, we still do the majority of that, but with the creation of the stormwater district, we were able to hire 2 part-time FTEs, and stormwater contributes to material costs that streets can use for installing and redigging some of these sumps. So as you can see, some performance measures in here that we did in 2021. This is a huge job. I believe that the stormwater district is responsible for over 7,000 sumps and basins. I would like to see this number up to 1,200-1,300 clean per year, but we're going to need more resources and people to do that. Some of the other activities here, we've been chipping away at trying to upgrade some of our sidewalk infrastructure. And what triggers this is that anytime that there's any asphalt improvements where we have to go in and pave in front of a pedestrian crosswalk, if there are existing sidewalks and ADA ramps that may be out of spec, or if there's a sidewalk with no ramps, we are required by ProAg rules, which, forgive me, that is, I forget what the acronym is. It's a federal program, Public Right-of-Way Access Guidelines. I think I got that right. Anyway, it makes us, we have to go and bring them up to a current specification. So here's one, we had to go in there, we redug or installed a new sump, and we had to upgrade the ADA ramps. Last year we did 29 of these. One of our other main activities is a maintenance item that is second place to chip sealing, is crack sealing. And then we also have a similar product called a mastic applicator. And some of you guys may have seen on Brooks, we've been applying these 6-inch wide strips of this rubber material. It's similar to crack sealing, where the crack sealing will just fill a thin crack. Well, this machine and product allows us to cover larger areas. So like some of the alligator sections that you've seen in the wheel paths on Brooks, we can go in there and put this material down in lieu of coming back and doing a full mill and pave. Now, it isn't going to fix it forever, but we're hoping to see a 5 to 7 year life on this, and eventually will help save us money and postpone that full blown reconstruction and the costs that go with it. Alley grading. We put a fair amount of time into this. This is another very popular program. We try to get out and blade all the alleys that are dirt every summer, but we also put forth a tremendous effort in responding to requests too. We will prioritize people requests over just the routine ones as time and resources allow. In over 13 hours of time spent with dump trucks and the grader, you can see working on alleys. I should also mention too, if an alley is paved, we will patch potholes, but we do not repave alleys. Those would be up to the adjacent property owner. And you may ask, so how do we decide which streets we're going to pave? And there's a group of individuals from mobility, from utilities, water, sewer, stormwater. We get together every year and we sit down in a conference room and we talk about the different projects that we want to do for an upcoming summer. Mobility, they want to do more greenways, or they want to add to the bike lane network. Water may have an old storm main that they want to repair. And then I'll sit down and say, well, I'd like to do all these streets. How can we coordinate our efforts and do some cost sharing and accomplish all of these goals across the departments? And this was one, this is, Missoula Avenue. And this is one that had been a real difficult street for years due to the high amount of pedestrian activity on it. The street was in poor condition. And I'd wanted to go in there and just pave it for years. But because there was no curb, it was difficult to justify adding a whole bunch of costs for asphalt without the proper infrastructure. And then the mobility folks wanted to make an improvement and add to our pedestrian and bike lane network. So we wanted to solve a whole bunch of problems with one fell swoop. We did some research and came up with these asphalt speed tables that slow people down, but it also enabled us to justify spending the amount of money that was going to need to repave the whole thing and adding these speed tables. I would say this project has been very well received by the public. We've received a lot of positive feedback, and it appears to have accomplished what we all set out to do. So there's some of the guys building it. It was kind of an interesting process to build one of these tables with asphalt. And I watched a YouTube video from California, and they built this screed board because it's not concrete. This would be a similar process to concrete. So we kind of had to figure out and innovate a way to build it to the right height, but then accommodate for the compaction when we drive the roller over it. The guys, Streets did a great job with putting these together, and they came out really nice. Primary funding source for streets, we receive money from the road district, obviously. We also receive a gas tax allocation, and the gas tax allocation has been around for years. This comes from MDT, and it's based on centerline miles within the city. And then the more recent one is the Barsa funding. This also comes from gas tax. This one's a little bit different in that the legislature required that we be project specific. So I think right now we're getting around 250,000 for street maintenance. I think the total amount of both of these is upwards of 1.2 million. And so every year when I get my allocation, I have to figure out, okay, I need to do which streets do I want to use the 250 for? Most recently, we did a large part of Lincoln Hills. Streets is working on Schilling right now. And then I'm planning on doing some milling and overlaying on Grant Creek here maybe next week. So that's where some of that new Barsa fund's going. I would entertain questions, but just a couple other things I'd like to mention. I really hesitated on whether I should include a bunch of those performance measures. I realize when I personally have sat through presentations and people show, centerline miles or how much money they spend on certain things, it probably sticks in my brain for 2 seconds, and then you move on to the next slide. But I wanted to generate some of those numbers because we pulled everything from calendar year 2021 and FY21. And I want to kind of set the table for what's going to be coming for our budget presentation for streets. And when I pull those performance measures, and they'll be similar for FY22, what I'm afraid you're going to see is they're not going to be at the same level. And that, like the citizens and the community, and I guess the nationwide, we're all struggling with supply chain issues. Inflation has obviously been real difficult for everybody, and streets is no exception. Some of our major problems have been materials availability, supply chain issues with getting equipment parts. Like, for example, I'm down to 1 patch truck right now. I should be running 3. Historically, if one of our primary pieces of equipment breaks down, if it's not a major issue, we can get it back and running in a couple of days. The parts are here, we get them. Now, sometimes if something breaks down, even if it's not a major issue, it might be 2 or 3 weeks. And so we're struggling with keeping some of our frontline equipment. For example, my big paving roller was down for 3 or 4 weeks where I couldn't even pave. So these are big issues that are affecting our productivity. Also, with some of our materials, right now we are restricted. We can only buy enough asphalt for paving projects 2 days a week. There is one company that's producing asphalt in Missoula currently right now. The other supplier is having labor shortages and hasn't been able to run their asphalt plant for at least 2 weeks. Maybe they hope to start up next week. Well, Streets has the ability, we could pave 4 days a week and haul 600 to 1,000 tons a day. We are now being restricted to about 200 tons a day for 2 days. So I'm not very optimistic on how much of our construction schedule is going to get done this summer. We are running out of time, and our construction season is short anyway. And I have a whole bunch of prep we need to get done to even get our chip seal program up and running. So I'm just kind of setting the table. I know that this is going to be an issue across the city. Everybody's going to probably have similar issues with supply chain, needing more personnel and needing more people. We need more employees. I did just a quick little general performance measure where I found some old information from my files from 2007, where the city centerline miles were 301 centerline miles. Now we're over 242. Staffing at street maintenance in 07, I was able to put out 13.6 employees per centerline mile. With where we are today, we're at 10.3. So what that shows you is that we've slowly been inching down a lower level of service due to the city's unprecedented growth that we've seen. And we're not keeping up is what it amounts to. And as with the new budget requests that are going to come across from traffic services and siding, striping and street maintenance, I'm afraid that those budget requests, if we don't get them, we will continue to see a decline in service, possibly at a more accelerated rate. And I do not envy council in your position to make those tough decisions. So that's my soapbox. Any questions on anything?
Thanks, Brian, so much for all that information. I'm always amazed at how much happens under Public Works that a lot of people, I think, just don't really understand. So thanks for bringing all this information forward. I'm gonna look at here. I have Mike Nugent and then Jordan Hess.
Great, thank you. And thanks for all the information. There are so many different areas that I find fascinating, could ask questions on. One thing, though, I was curious on the install on the police cruisers. How common is that model for that to be done in-house in a city versus a third party or something like that? And are there pros and cons to that? And then are we concerned about the turnaround time on those at all?
Yes. Yes to all questions. Trying to have a third party install these apparently was done several years ago. And apparently it was not met with a lot of success. And one of the main reasons we keep doing it is it saves money, but also if the city employees, if our city employees install them, when there's issues with it or something breaks down, they know exactly what parts to order. They put them in, they know how to fix it to increase the turnaround time. And I believe with the private installer, there weren't that many vendors that were even willing to do it. But then, what if it's a private shop and they have a whole bunch of other clients they have to satisfy? Would they be able to prioritize our first respond police vehicles and get them out at the door as quick as the police department may need? And that is going to segue into one of our requests. Rick needs some more people. So did I answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, you kind of hit at the end and I was afraid of that, but figured that might be part of the answer because it just seems like a lot for one person to be tackling.
Well, we have 3 technicians and we did get another one here last budget season. So we have improved. I mean, the fact that we got 16 done in 2020 is more than we've ever done before.
Great.
Thank you. Jordan, go ahead.
Thanks. I've heard street maintenance be referred to like painting a house, where if you don't paint the house, you have to eventually you're going to have to replace the siding or do other things. And I know when we were working on the local option fuel tax that the legislature took away from us, there was discussion about if we adequately maintain our roads and keep them in good condition through crack sealing and chip sealing and whatnot, it would cost us X amount of money a year, versus if we just let things go and had to rebuild, had to do reconstruction or more major rehabilitations, it's going to cost significantly more. Can you give us a little perspective on what how we're doing on this infrastructure backlog and what our needs are? And if we were to be able to fully fund street maintenance, how far away are we from what the true needs are?
Yeah, Jordan, and I thank you for that question. And I forgot to mention another part of that decision process where, remember, all the groups get together and we decide which projects we're going to do. Another part of that is back in 2018, the city paid for a consultant to do a pavement management system survey where this company came in and they drove all the city streets. They measured the number of cracks with LiDAR. They took 360-degree imagery and they put all this data into a software called MicroPave. And they used it to develop the pavement condition of all the streets across the entire city. And then with that, MicroPave does an analysis based on some logic as to if you could most effectively allocate resources on which streets you should maintain, chip seal, crack seal, rebuild, and allocate what's your best bang for the buck. And so with that, it spit out some different scenarios. And one of the ones, just to maintain our current level of service, I think we were under by, gosh, I should have had this information at my fingertips. But anyway, it was like $5 or $6 million that we were under budget. And to bring our local streets up to the same condition as our arterials and collectors, I think was like upwards of 10 or $12 million was needed. And that's a real, big shot, rough overview. But anyway, when I go through that PMS, I can look at some of the recommendations on where some of those resources should be allocated. Like, for example, Pleasant View, it was identified in need of a chip seal. So I focused some chip seal efforts on that. The thing with the PMS system is that once a local street, say, falls below a certain condition, it falls into a complete reconstruct. Okay, then your cost can go up, 10 times, say, compared to what a crack seal or chip seal. I'm just pulling that off the top of my head. It may not be exact now, certainly now with the inflation effects that are going on. But you're exactly right. Maintaining is substantially less expensive than going back and rebuilding and repaving. The problem is, even if council say, all right, Brian, we're going to give you another $10 million. Well, that isn't going to cover what is needed to reconstruct all those other streets, because it doesn't make economic sense to put forth the money that's needed with new curb, new storm drain, new pavement, new sidewalks, new bike lanes, new ADA ramps. We're talking way more than $10 million just to bring those old streets up that need to be reconstructed. So what the PMS focuses on, all right, let's maintain what we have that's in reasonable condition.
So a follow-up question. If I guess a couple of years ago you did a chip seal through the 44 Ranch neighborhood, and that it's a relatively new neighborhood, but that sort of follows that logic where we have streets that are in good condition, so we want to keep them in good condition, because if they fall into disrepair, we have a much bigger problem on our hands.
Yes. Yes. And one thing too is keep in mind that the PMS gives you some guidance, but it still requires human oversight and judgment. Like some of these local streets, I just can't let them fall back into a wagon wheel path. And so I have to go out there and I try to chip away at some of these local streets because they get to a point of such severe deterioration that they're unsafe. And so do I have the money to go and rebuild every one of them? No, I don't. But can I go in there and do some other? Maybe I can do some driving lanes, some thin lifts overlays, or just mill out portions of them and do some asphalt replacement and then chip seal it. And on local streets with lower traffic, I've seen a lot of success where we might get another 15, 20 years out of them. That's where the human oversight and judgment has to come in. And I had some success with that in the Wapaki area. Those streets are 40, 50 years old. They weren't in great shape, but they hadn't fallen to a point of complete disrepair where I could go in there and do some chip seal. We could fix some of the potholes. We did some thin lifts, chip sealed it. I'm hoping to get another 20, 30 years out of them.
Great. Any other questions from council members?
You guys are letting me off way too easy.
I know.
Well, one thing I didn't mention, Myrta, if I may, is that, I know you will get calls from constituents about streets for various items. By all means, feel free, call my cell phone, send me an email. If you have questions, I'm happy to jump in and help answer questions. oftentimes it's easier just to have that person call me. I can explain it to them than, us going back and forth with emails. And so I'm happy to help, and by all means, call anytime.
Thank you, Brian. Kristen, go ahead.
Thanks. That was actually my question. I'd love to get, a couple speed trailers in certain areas in my ward, in Ward 6, and I'll be reaching out to you. So thank you.
Fair enough.
Brian, one of the questions that I've gotten a couple of times, especially in the winter time with plowing, snow plowing, is people have asked, can the city just contract out with a private company so that they can do more of the local streets, or can we use some of the other departments' trucks that might not being used during the winter and fit them with a plow? Can you talk a little bit about how that in theory sounds good, but there's a lot more complexities to it?
Yes. So I actually analyzed that option prior to us making the budget request for the 4 additional FTEs. And what I found was that for us to pay for that contracted snow service was more expensive. It would have taken a substantial effort to administer the contract. We were concerned about trying to coordinate who could even take on that big of a project. We have to hire multiple contractors. Is there one contractor that could do everything? The costs were higher, and plus streets needed more people all times of the year, not just during winter. So I requested, give me the money that we would have paid for contracting to give me 4 more people that can be used year round, not just for snow, versus paying an outside entity to try and just plow for 2 or 3 months. And I didn't get a very big response, which I thought I would. And I called several businesses in town. I think I got 1 or 2 that were even willing to do it. So I could go back and look at some of my files if you wanted more information, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, no, I think it's just good for us to know, because I get a lot of calls sometimes in the winter, and people have all kinds of suggestions for how to fill in the gaps that sometimes we can't. So I think it's just good background information. I don't see any other hands up, so I guess you're getting off pretty easy.
No potholes and only 1 snow question. Wow.
I mean, I can come up with more, but
no sweeping complaints, nothing, huh?
Well,
all right.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Brian, for this information. I think it'll be useful for when we have to make decisions during budget season, and we can all have a little bit more background on what it takes to get our infrastructure maintained and improved and repaired. So,
well, and I appreciate that. And I would certainly appreciate if council could keep in mind, because we've seen this unprecedented growth in the last few years, that every subdivision that results in more centerline miles for us to maintain, and we're getting further and further behind. So thank you all. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone. And that was our last presentation for last item on the agenda. So with that, we would be adjourned.